The only reason I'm making this video is so that I can give this character, one of the most bravest and most tragic souls in Solaris 3, a full-length legacy in the Wu community. Because she deserves it, and some. Have you ever realized that if not for Looper, Mya's struggles, Mya's sacrifices would have all fallen on deaf's ears? So in some sense, I guess I also gotta give some credit to Cristoforo too for shedding some light on her, albeit that light turning her into some half-Thenodian trout. She's no Sentinel Resonator, she's no gifted warrior, and she's not even a playable character. She's just a normal girl who in her last breaths still chose love in a world that constantly showed she wasn't worth it. Much like Geshu-Lin, albeit having somewhat small screen time, her impact cannot be understated. It's quality over quantity, and she really is a quality character. And if you've properly looked into her lore, you'll know. Oh, you'll know. And if you haven't, all good, because I suspect that's why you clicked on this video, to learn. So buckle up, it's time we prepare to cry about Mya. Before even coming into existence, Mya was created to be a potential resonator for the Renacetor Thenodian, Leviathan. Because after assimilating with Imperator, Leviathan learned that it too can have its own resonator. Or maybe it was only possible because it got with Imperator. Well, whatever the case, in using the Sentinel's return pod, it conceived various vessels for itself, including Mya. And eventually, somewhere in Raguna, Mya was born. But for reasons unbeknownst to any of us, her family left the city to come to Septimont. So she was born in Raguna, but raised in Septimont. Now, if I'm to speculate as to why Mya's family left Raguna, I have a few theories. The first, and easily the most normal, is that maybe her parents found better opportunities over at Septimont. Better work, better lifestyle, etc. Very normal reason. The second is that, yeah, the power trip off the Order of the Deep was really getting on their nerves, so they dipped. And finally, if I'm going into the conspiracy route, perhaps Leviathan manipulated Mya's parents so that they headed to Septimont purposely, as a means of essentially planting a Thenodian bomb there in the form of Mya. I mean, it did plant memories into Cardathea's parents, so who says it can't do the same to Mya's parents? But once again, conspiracy theory, so yes, very crazy and quite unlikely. Regardless, Mya's in Septimont now, and that's where she calls home. Though I heavily suspect in this new home, Mya wasn't doing so well financially, considering her priorities in the gladiatorial ring were majorly monetary, but we'll get to that in due time. Fast forward some years, and Mya finds herself wanting to become a gladiator. The likely reason? She found her passion in it. Perhaps on another typical day in Septimont, watching one of the matches of the Great Aegon lit a fire inside that she could not deny. I mean, just listen to a monologue about it.
I love this. Gladiating. Just stepping into the arena makes me feel happy.
And honestly, it's probably this very passion which was the sole reason she was able to come back for one last stand during the story's conclusion. Another matter I'll dive into later. But first of all, before she even starts fighting, she's gonna need some equipment. And thus, Mya decides to melt down her religious gold ornament from Raguna into a gladiator helmet. Although, the gold probably wasn't the main jewel of that ornament, it was the gem nested in it, a symbol of Raguna's faith. And this gem has a rather prominent past. Passed between many hands, the gem now shines with a deep purple, bears the mark of tidal blight, and houses the silhouettes of drifting fish. So, when you consider this lore, it does make you wonder whether it purposely landed in Mya's hands, considering her origin and all. Well, let's worry about her Thenodian ties later, because Mya's finally entering into the ring, and she's having an absolute blast of a time. She appreciates the people who shout her name from the stands and laugh in celebration at her victories, and she adores the coarse, unrestrained laughter of the crowds, for they felt warm and gave her strength. These are simply some of the likely multitudes of positive experiences she felt during the days when she was first stepping into the arena. But then, what's her performance actually like in the ring? Well, she's actually quite the powerhouse. Although this is not because of any powerful resonance ability. In fact, they were considered meager at best. No, her strength was all earned. She trained hard and she trained diligently. Being a sword and shield fighter, she's got equal expertise in offensive and defensive strats. She's as balanced as fighters get. And her abilities were seemingly enough to get by. She could earn the bank and still love the sport. Back then at least. But unfortunately, destiny rears its ugly, scaly face, for Leviathan had entered her life. Why? Well, I suspect Mya was of an appropriate developmental stage whereby she could handle its frequency and thus fulfill the purpose for which she was conceived, to drown Septimont in the dark tide. And so, with its newfound vessel, Leviathan began its ruinous process, constantly whispering at Mya to fracture her soul, break her mind, and eventually leave an empty husk for the Thenodian to do with as it pleases. Never does a day go by where she isn't reminded of her failures, her lowly origin, and the disappointment she brings to her fans. Anything that felt positive in her life, Leviathan twisted, and no matter what Mya did, nothing could stop its relentless attacks. Shivers that racked her body, screams that tore through her throat. The cracks in Mya's persona only grew by the day as Leviathan's taunts ceaselessly continued. The level of gaslighting that Mya had to endure is mind-boggling. And do you know what's worse? We've yet to hear where her parents are in all of this. Perhaps Mya left them in the dark to not worry them, or maybe Leviathan got to them before Mya even had the chance to say anything. Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure Mya didn't have many friends either. She had no one she could confide with. No one. And I mean, who would even believe her? A Raguna deity has business in Septimont? What? As a result of all this isolation and mental torture, her performance in the ring dropped, and honestly you would expect nothing less. Like at times she was able to perform, but the times she fumbled hard. It was abysmal. Pretty sure girl was having hysteric freakouts mid-fight. And do you know how bad that looks? Especially for a crowd of people culturally known for valuing strength and bravery? The Septimontians recognize that Mya can fight well, but alas, they're ignorant as to why she can't. They just focus on the fact that she can't. Perhaps they'd give her some leeway if she was able to connect with the people, but at this point, Mya's struggling to connect with even her own self-worth, and thus her value as a gladiator plummeted to rock bottom. But in nearing the floor of irrelevancy, a Septimontian by the name of John picks her up to become her manager.
A competent gladiator with psychological issues. Sounds like money to me.
It's probably what John was thinking, because that's allegedly the only reason she signed with Mya, to wring every last credit out of her. And so John gets Mya fighting in the underground pits, which I suspect is your typical black market gladiator fights, full of dangerous and dirty matches. I theorize many of the above ground matches weren't interested in getting Mya into their rings because of her notorious reputation, so beggars can't be choosers. Mya is able to perform well enough to be considered John's precious golden goose, but Leviathan's not going anywhere, and so her mental well-being continues to slip ever more. The hallucinations, the hysteria, it's been a lot and more on Mya. It's so bad she can't even connect that well with the crowds anymore, and she's often seen crying alone in the lounges. To be a successful gladiator, it's not just a physical sport, but a social sport too. So it's not surprising as to why her value dropped so drastically. Clout is power, and right now Mya is losing in that bout too. Somewhat. Because regardless of all her troubles, when Mya performs, she performs. And her fan base is strong enough to bury John in complaints if he benches her. But as to whether those fans are there for her, or the money she'll bring, is another matter. Because match fixing is so rampant in these underground fights that people are only concerned whether she performs or not. Here, Mya is not a person. She is an opportunity. And if you thought it was just the shady crowd that was doing her over in Septimont, no, because the snide Septimont nobles also had their plans with Mya. Her matches would serve as a cover to incite chaos and bloodshed, and thus quietly solve the Senate's problems. It's always what can Mya do for us. Never is Mya okay. And when you consider all of this, all of it, gosh, the isolation she must be feeling is excruciatingly suffocating. And that's not even the end of it, because I'm betting Mya is more than aware of what's going on around her thanks to Leviathan. Because if there's anything that can contribute to her mind breaking, Leviathan will blab. But when I think about all this, I guess I gotta wonder, why the hell would Mya put up with all of this? With everything? Really, the crutch of all this seems to be in her continuing the gladiator gig. Why? My theory, she's desperate. When you look at her monologue, as much as she was admiring the sport, she also outlines how she can't treat it like a hobby and that she needs the money. For extra context, she's saying all of this after Leviathan's already been screwing over her life for the better part of some years. Though I'm sure there was a point in time where she could treat gladiating as a hobby and occupation, but alas. Remember, Mya probably comes from a poor upbringing, and if she were to change occupations now, especially with her mental problems, that would not be a good prospect. Because how can she learn something new when she's already struggling at the task she's trained most of her life for? She'd be fired before she is hired. Furthermore, she's already invested so much into gladiating. It's not perfect, but she can still perform. Her training is paying off, and it's something she still loves. Speaking of her training, did you know Mya spent almost all her time out of the arena training beyond the barest of needs? And that kind of dedication wasn't well regarded in Septimont. Sure, one could see this complete devotion to honing their craft as an ideal to strive towards, but I theorize the true reason wasn't as noble. With the permanent liability that was Leviathan, I suspect Mya had to absolutely overcompensate to ensure a better win rate. Because in the limited time she could maintain control in her fights, she probably had to end them quick before her brain turned to mush. And with her not being born with any special abilities or given any special equipment, her only way to achieve this was via pure, unquestionable training. So, with this in mind, yeah, in spite of everything, the exploitation, the mental damage, Mya's desperation likely made her more than willing to stick her neck out amongst all of the stink, if it meant she could rake in the cash and keep at it with her passions, no matter how much the industry twisted it. I swear, if she had someone she could talk with, she'd be able to think up of better informed decisions, thanks to the fresh perspectives. But alas, her painful journey remains a lonely one. And so, some time passes, and eventually Septimont hosts its tetra-annual event, the Great Aegon. Yes, it's better known as the Bloody Aegon back then, but come on, give me a break. I want to have some grandeur in this already depressing life I'm recounting. On its first day, well, things simply still suck. Whilst Mya makes it to the semi-finals, mentally she's made no progress. As much as she tries to reassure herself that things are fine, they aren't. And how could they be when you've had a voice in your head that's been telling you that for years? But on the Great Aegon's second day, by the Sentinel, what a gift she received. Mya is successful in winning the semi-finals, and as she fled the arena to earn some semblance of peace and quiet, a young fan hands her a bouquet of bloodleaf viburnums before stammering his praises for her performance. Bro, even I can feel the significance of that moment. Yeah, Mya cried, and even your boy's getting a little emotional. It has just been shit after shit after shit after shit, and Leviathan's not making it any better. In fact, it's one of the primary enablers of her current dog water situation. But from all the gaslighting it's done, this single interaction it cannot take away, for it is unquestionable evidence that Mya is indeed loved and appreciated. When all you've seen is blinding darkness, it's hard to appreciate the glimmers of light, and I suspect that one light with the fan reminded Mya again of the positive experiences the sport used to bring her. And so on the third day of the Great Aegon, Mya is victorious, and is thus blessed by Arsinosa, Septimon's guardian echo. And with his blessing and Imperator's frequency, Leviathan had his pieces to destroy Septimon. At this point, Mya's will was on its last legs. She was merely a fading reverberation. Her body was nearly a puppet to Leviathan, and it was forcibly moved towards the Veil of Glory where the Thenodian would ultimately enact its plan. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Mya was aware of the plan too, considering, once again, it would serve as more ammo for Leviathan to blast Mya with. The weak gladiator that let millions die. If it will mentally break Mya, Leviathan will blab. But you know what Leviathan wouldn't do? What Mya did. Because in the remnants of her last will, Mya took her sword and plunged it into her chest to thwart the Thenodian. Her last words?
Better to die than to be a puppet. Death does not scare me.
The tiniest spark of human will ultimately prevailed over a godly being. The spark of bravery, selflessness, and victory. Honestly, it wouldn't have surprised me if Mya purposely let Leviathan win, considering how much Septimon had done her over. But no, she chose love, and she fought for that love to the very end. Because in spite of the overwhelming darkness Septimon plunged her into, Mya chose to fight for the beauty of this city's land, to fight for the affections of this city's people, and to fight for the glory of this city's values. And I strongly suspect if not for that moment on the second day, Mya's last hurrah would have never happened. That little boy's innocent admiration reminded Mya that she is not only loved, but she is also a winner. After all, according to Lupa, that's what the bloodleaf viburnums represent. Victory. And thus Mya found the strength to fight again, to win against a being she has been failing to beat for years, Leviathan. And as her consciousness fades, allow me to read her final moments. She glances back at Septimon, the place that had given her both joy and suffering. It had won her heart and broken it in equal measure. The ancient city stood ablaze beneath the fiery sunset, its reflection in Mya's eyes as vivid as when she first crossed the sea with her family and set foot on this land. How beautiful. As much as we could wish that the cooling grasps of the Renascido waves would be her final resting place, Cristoforo thought otherwise. For 20 years later, he would be responsible for not only fishing her out, but also performing torturous experiments on her with the hopes of reawakening the slivers of Leviathan's frequency within her. Mind you, her soul never really left her body. All that time, Mya's reverberations were able to feel the pain of Cristoforo's scientific ravaging. And this pain would continue as her form was transformed into a half-human, half-Thenodian abomination. Even in the afterlife, if you can even call this an afterlife, Leviathan has gained control of her life. But thankfully, a like-minded fellow gives her the chance to rid its control once again. And this time, Mya gets to go out as a proper gladiator, not as a silent hero. I don't think Lupa ever properly introduced herself to Mya, but based on the vibes she brought, yeah, no godfish was gonna let Mya miss out on this opportunity, an honorable duel. Fight night. Great Aegon champion versus Great Aegon champion. Because before everything transpired, Mya has always been a gladiator at heart, finding passion in the confrontation and glory in the victory. So with the match presented to her, Mya's dominating affection for the sport probably enabled her to retake control from Leviathan and thus allow her to duel Lupa, one gladiator to another. Sure, it ended in her loss, but that's okay. More than okay. Because if there's a way that Mya would want to leave this world, I'm sure this would have been it. A gladiator's death. Quoting Lupa's fiery words here,
To face death with the crown of glory! By my will! Let this light burn in all its fury!
To me, there is no greater joy in this world.
Mya gave a good fight and ended it with dignity on her own accord. Beautiful. And what's more, she's not alone this time. Lupa was there, happily witnessing her final moments, smiling for a battle well fought. And with that all being said and done, that is the story of Mya. Abide all of the tragedy. You can't help but smile with her ending. And now I'm going to commit a Cristoforo and bring the tone of this video back down to that tragic sorrow, because I want to affirm what makes Mya's tale so tragic. Okay, I think what'll really help accentuate the tragedy of her character, because her story hasn't already enough, is when you compare her to Lupa. Because if you think about it, the two share very parallel lives, i.e. both are gladiators who are honorably passionate about the sport, and albeit being in the crossfires of their management's dirty tactics, they ultimately win the Great Aegon. But there's three fundamental points of difference that distinguish the pair. First off, Mya was not gifted. She was not naturally strong. She had to work for her strength. The strength Lupa works a day to attain probably takes Mya a week. And if you want literal evidence of Lupa being someone that's gifted, listen for yourself.
I've always wondered if I didn't have this gift, could I have reached this point with clean hands?
Indeed, Mya is another common tale of the talentless, so it's nothing new. Not that she even minded. Hell, she was probably quite happy to put in the grind, since she very much loved gladiating. But then once Leviathan was introduced, Mya had to work for her strength. In all caps, regardless if it impacted her societal image. Because the Thenodian basically served as a permanent debuff on her quality of life. And with no special abilities, no special weapons, and no way out, the only way she could deal with this situation was to train to uncomfortable degrees. Honestly, if she honed her mental strength as much as she did with her physical strength, she might have been in a better position. But alas, working out your mentality is not as straightforward as picking up a weight. Remember, strength is not just about physicality, there's also a mental aspect to it. And unlike Lupa and even Cardathea, Mya lacked the mental fortitude to effectively repel Leviathan's incessant taunts, thus making her constantly fall victim to it, which makes her go out of control, which makes tournament sponsors not want to feature her in their matches, which forces her to work for shady managers, which makes them enter her into shady tournaments that ultimately exploit her. All of this because her mental wasn't so strong. Now, the second difference between her and Lupa was that Mya was alone. If she had more shoulders she could lean on to compensate for her lack of strength, she'd be way better equipped to deal with her predicaments. But no, she seemingly had no one. I mean, to be fair, Lupa was also alone too, but eventually she came to have Rover and Cardathea in her life. Mya, on the other hand, remained to have no one, even in her death. All of her struggles she shouldered alone. No one to share her burdens with, no one to advise her to make more informed decisions, no one to just genuinely care for her. No one. And finally, the third difference between her and Lupa is that Mya's legacy will probably remain as that of a competent gladiator who at times lost her mind. I suspect once Lupa explains Septimon's situation to Augusta and Iuno, she'll be crowned as a hero for all of Septimon to love. The rising star of their great Aegon is also the shining star of the city's fate. But Mya? Yeah, absolutely no one's gonna know what she's done for them. They'll never know of the ultimate sacrifice she made for Septimon. In spite of falling victim to all of its darkness, she won't get any glory from it, she won't be championed as a hero for it, she'll get nothing in return for it despite the city spitting in her face. And yet, she still chose to do it. I swear, Lupa, please, you gotta do something for Mya. Endorse the girl's legacy, get her a statue built, just something. And Kuro Games, you know what I want you to do? Make her playable. Bruh, I'd be content if she was made as an exclusive 3-star resonator or something. Like, Kuro Games, you can make her combat pretty basic. Perhaps a tad acrobatic because girl can flip, but you know, a simple sword and shield moveset will do. I mean, Cardathea is clearly a Zelda reference, so just go all in and get some inspiration from Link's gameplay to model Mya's. And then her ultimate can be like her transforming into that abomination if you want, I don't know. Although her sword should totally be a 4-star weapon, because it actually looks kinda cool. And it helps stop a Thenodian, so it's got that clout. Now in terms of Sonata effect, maybe Arrow? Because the vibe of her abilities feel familiar to Cardathea's, especially with the two being sisters. But honestly, it's up to you lot. Just get her in the game. Alright, I think I've said my piece on Mya. Time we end the video. You know you've made a compelling character when some doofus on the internet decides to make a tribute to them despite them being a non-playable character and having less than half an hour's worth of screen time. But hey, I do it for the passion. Her legacy might not be much over in Solaris 3, but in our world, she gets this video, and I'll be damned if I don't do it. But she also gets the adoration of the millions of players who got to learn her story too. So win-win. Anyhow, would love to hear your thoughts on our tragic heroine in the comments below. Follow my socials if you want to keep up with your boy, and like and subscribe if you want more from your boy. Much love and take care, is what I usually say, but once again, I want to end this video a little differently. A final closing message, because if you actually go back to the Veil of Glory after finishing 2.4 and touch Mya's sword, you get to read this. She had always hesitated, never at peace, consumed by fear. The fear of both victory and defeat, of the city that both embraced her and rejected her. But at the end of the end, she had found contentment beyond the crowd and the cheers. The cold currents had receded, and the sunset was gentle. There was regret, yes, but no remorse. She closed her eyes, the last vestiges of her consciousness rising to the surface before dissipating like foam. Rest well, Mya, and thank you for everything.